as Marvel Rivals continues to win over the hearts and minds of fans everywhere, and pluck obscure characters and put them into the spotlight. It also solves interesting problems for well-established characters like the Punisher. Hey Internet, I'm Chris, and this is the place on the internet where I talk about comics, movies, games, and things I'm generally passionate about. Before we get into the Punisher, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let's dive in. But yes, I have a confession. I am a Punisher main. I know that will probably put me in a negative light to a lot of you online, but I don't care. I am loud and proud a Punisher main. Now, the Punisher as a character in the Marvel canon, I don't know if I'd consider him A-list, but he is a character that has had multiple film adaptations. Also, a TV show is going to appear in Daredevil Born Again. John Bernthal is obviously the perfect live-action Punisher. And he's even had video games before Marvel Rivals. So he's a character that I think is popular enough. But I think one thing that Marvel and Disney has struggled with is that he is a character that is hyper-violent in a world of superheroes. And because of that, they've always struggled, especially since Disney has bought Marvel, to kind of integrate him into the Marvel universe at large. And it doesn't help the fact that the Punisher symbol, the thing he wears all the time, has been used by certain groups. And because of that, I think they've avoided using the character because maybe they just feel like it'll associate with certain groups that they don't want to. They're the Mickey Mouse Corporation. They just don't want to do that, which makes sense. They just want to make money and not be associated with anything. And it does not help that the Punisher symbol has been used by certain groups. And there was a time in around 2020, or I think before 2020, where even the co-creator of the Punisher, Jerry Conway, was trying to reclaim the Punisher symbol. And I think Marvel Rivals does a good job of proving that, hey, if you make something good about the character and you put him in something interesting, all of those things get washed away. And what I mean by washed away is that these characters are comic book characters. And the reality is you can't control how these things are interpreted. Yes, putting a character, especially in a country that has a gun violence problem, it is hard to have a character that is hyper violent when you have a billion-dollar movie franchise and all those kind of things. And I think sometimes it gets lost on these corporations that if you make something good, like Marvel Rivals, or the Daredevil series, or the Punisher Netflix series, people just enjoy it for what it is, for the most part. You know, there's always, especially these days, going to be people that sort of take the wrong message from a piece of media. But I would argue that TV, film, comic books, and even video games have done a lot less to promote violence than, let's say, social media, which I think is a lot more toxic when it comes to the actual problems that affect society instead of a comic or a video game or a film or a TV show. And the Punisher is an interesting character because I think for the most part, he represents revenge and obviously, like I said, is hyper-violent. But I don't think people see a problem with John Wick. John Wick movies could come out all the time and we all consume them. We all enjoy them for what they are. It is a fine outlet to enjoy those things without being considered a psycho. And Marvel Rivals, for the most part, is played by 10, 20 million people, including my son, who is also a Punisher main. I'm sorry for putting that on him. I know, again, you guys probably hate me for that. But what's interesting about even the Punisher design in this game is that he is maxed out. He is super brolic, has all the guns you can think of, has two Punisher symbols, not just one on his chest, but actually one painted on his face, which is insane when you think about it because the Punisher symbol is supposed to be drawing fire to his chest. So if it's on his face, which is not protected, and he's not a metahuman.
They slapped this bulletproof vest on me and gave me a gun.
But what if he shot you in the face?
What's that about? And I think this happens too much with certain companies. They may feel like they don't want to touch a certain character because they feel like it's a lightning rod or like they don't want to deal with it. And I'm glad the Punisher is coming back in a big way this year with Marvel Rivals and obviously Daredevil Born Again, so they've kind of learned their lesson. And I made a video about Iron Fist and how that character also was affected by Marvel Rivals, where it's not really sort of the things that are outside that really affect these characters, is really the company making bad decisions and not really highlighting that character. And I think with the Punisher, the reason why it was so easy for that symbol to be co-opted and reclaimed by certain groups is that, guess what? There wasn't much Punisher stuff going on outside of that. So there wasn't, an ongoing series. There was a really good Jason Aaron series where they did change the symbol in it, which was kind of dumb. And, if you just saw the press release, you'd be like, oh my God, they're trying to stealth remove the Punisher from the Marvel Universe by giving him, putting him with the hand and giving him a different symbol. But that was actually a really good book. So I think if you watch the YouTube videos before that book came out, there were probably a lot of people like, oh my God, there Marvel and Disney go again. But it actually was a really good book. So I don't know if people really talked about it afterwards, because I think that's, again, a funny thing about the internet these days is that people will complain about something before it comes out. And then when it comes out and it's really good, no one apologizes or says, hey, I'm wrong. And I think one thing I want to do about this channel as I'm sort of grow and talk to you guys is that, hey, as we have these conversations, as I have opinions, hopefully they evolve. We have to do better about that as a society. But that's an aside. Let's get back to the Punisher. I think Disney and Marvel did a poor job of highlighting that character and using that character in a light. I don't think it has anything to do with the actual character of the Punisher, which, again, and it shows when you have something like Marvel Rivals and you have a character like the Punisher doing really well. Again, people think, Punisher players are low IQ, and we are sometimes. But for the most part, it is something that is, again, he is in a game where it's positive. He has Daredevil Born Again coming out again. I do think they do try to shy away from him being in the costume too much. Like even in the Born Again previews, we don't see him in his classic suit. And then also in the Punisher series, there was a lot of times where he wasn't in it. But guess what? There are going to be times where he has to have it in the wash and stuff. And even when they did the Jason Aaron series, they tried to change the logo. And then they also did, I think, a Garth Ennis Get Fury series. And in that, for the most part, it was set during Vietnam. And he wasn't really like the Punisher. And I think I only read like 1 or 2 issues and I didn't read the rest. So I don't know if he ever got to put on like the Punisher logo. I'd imagine he probably did. They've just tried to avoid it for the longest time. Marvel Rivals shows that you can have a character like the Punisher interact with the Marvel Universe and it isn't weird. Like it could be fun. It could be lighthearted. Even with his huge guns that are, physical in his arms in this game, and then also the actual guns he carries around. And I'm hoping, being that Marvel Rivals solved the Punisher issue, we'll see a lot more of Frank Castle in the Marvel Universe, both in comics, film, TV, and games.